Good afternoon. This is Samantha with the Law Offices of Samantha Wolfe, and we're here for this month's virtual seminar. And I'm here with Connor Burns. Connor is a legal intern at our office this semester, and you may have seen Connor in last month's virtual seminar. So we have him back today to talk about a fun and interesting topic. So Connor, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead, Connor. I know we have a PowerPoint, so let me share my screen so that we can tell everybody the fun topic that we have on for today. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is, or the title of today's presentation is Don't Get Scammed, Grandma, Protecting Seniors from Financial Predators. So I'm excited, Connor, to talk about this because I feel like it's a legal discussion that we're going to have, but it's also a discussion I think is just practical for our clients. So let's go ahead and dive in and start talking about this. Of course, we always do our seminars because it aligns with our mission. So we just want to make sure we're getting information out there to our clients and referral sources. So Connor, let's talk about what we're going to go over through our entire presentation today. So we're going to talk about what is elder financial abuse, why seniors are vulnerable to certain scams, what are the most common scams that are out there, some behavior warning signs, some financial warning signs, some legal methods to protect our seniors, commonly asked questions, and then next steps. And Connor did a great job putting together the presentation. We're gonna go over this, and then I'm gonna kind of pepper our dialogue with some examples of things that I've seen in practice when I'm dealing with clients. So this is an emerging topic. Pennsylvania actually had an elder abuse or financial abuse and exploitation task force because it had become so prevalent in Pennsylvania, where those aging people in our population were being taken advantage of. So what we're talking about with elder financial abuse is the exploitation of an older adult's resources by someone in a position of trust. And unfortunately, it seems like we're seeing it more and more with children, those that are close to our clients. So some examples of this would be unauthorized use of funds or property, coercing changes to legal documents like wills or trusts, and theft of valuables. Those are some three common examples that we're seeing. So Connor, talk to me a little bit about when you were doing research, why are seniors vulnerable to these type of scams when maybe they wouldn't have been previously?
Yeah, so a lot of the risks for seniors kind of stems from either cognitive decline, health issues, things of that nature. We might see instances where individuals have cases of Alzheimer's or dementia. Those individuals can really easily be taken advantage of, and we have to watch out for that. Social isolation also plays into that. So we see seniors that maybe have a divorced spouse or a deceased spouse rather, and they might live alone. So they might feel as if they are isolated, and if somebody's reaching out to them for help or money or whoever it is, they might be more inclined to do that. They may have also, because of this isolation, kind of a desire to trust others and help family members. They might feel as if they're the oldest in the family or one of the elders in the family, and it might be a feeling of responsibility to take care of those who, their children, their grandchildren, things of that nature. And we see a lot of limited digital literacy, and that's something that I'll get into a little more. But phone scams, phishing, different things of that nature really come into play here when it comes to older seniors.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I should say that when we're talking about some of these scams, I mean, I'm going to give some examples of business owners, people my age that have also fallen prey to these scams as well. So it's not just seniors that we're seeing, it's a kind of across the board. I think it's more widespread. But I think that when we're talking about our practice and the type of clients that we meet with daily, we just want to make sure that we're protecting the clients that we see on a regular basis. So, what are the most common scams? Now, when Connor put together the presentation, I asked him to go back and just tell me what scams that we were seeing because I'm always fascinated at what's out there. I think it's helpful for me to know, it's helpful for our clients to know, just generally know. So, we have phishing scam, tech support scams, romance scams, lottery and sweepstake scams, government scams, online shopping scams, healthcare scams, family member impersonation scams. So we're going to go through each of these. So let's start with phishing scams. And Connor, I'll let you explain what this would look like.
Yeah, so phishing scams are typically, fake emails, or you see a lot of it in emails, see a lot of it in text messages, from supposedly reputable companies, like banks or other online services, and they ask for personal information, that would be like bank account information, credit card information, social security information. Um, and these people aren't individuals that are actually coming from those reputable organizations. It's just kind of a front in order to attempt to garner some of that information from the individual. So I'll talk about a little bit why it works in particular. Seniors may be less familiar with detecting some of these cues, like suspicious URLs, or spelling errors. I know a lot of these scams originate from other countries, typically not native speaking English countries. So sometimes a good way to tell is the content of the messages. Yeah, and further going on, when we're talking about financial scams in particular, they might pose as a bank, such as JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America, or even credit card companies like American Express. I love this next section. It kind of got my creativeness flowing a little bit, but kind of how to avoid some of these scams. Banks will never ask you for account information or credit card information or social security numbers, to be given them directly over text or emails. Um, that's something that we see a lot with these scams. And the threat of maybe losing a bank account or losing all that money really does have an impact on these individuals, thinking that their life savings might be gone, or something of that nature. So they might want to get ahead of this really quickly, and because of that, they might do whatever these individuals ask immediately as they ask it. So what the theme for a lot of these scams is, when in doubt, contact the organization directly. um, and a lot of these emails or phishing scams, a lot of this stuff comes with contact information that they will provide you. I would caution you against ever using any of that contact information. If you get an email from JP Morgan Chase that says, your bank account's going to be closed out, go online, find the JP Morgan Chase official website, and contact them directly through their channels of operation. And ask simply, hey, I received this email or I received this message indicating this, this, and this. Is it real? Should I be concerned about this? And chances are, they'll just come back to you and say, nope, don't worry about that. That's not us. So,
I actually have experienced this in two ways. So we actually had this here in our office where randomly one work day at like 6:30, my staff received an email that appeared to be from me. And the email said, it was actually so ridiculous, but it said that I was really busy in client meetings, but I needed them to go and get iTunes gift cards and scratch off that code there or whatever, and then email them the codes, because I was giving it to clients and referral sources. So thankfully the staff was like, it's weird that Sam is having client appointments at 6:30 in the morning, so this is not legitimate. But it was odd because it looked like it had come from my email. It was only when you clicked on the sender email that it was off by one letter.
hmm.
So somebody had acted as if they were me at my office sending it from my email account. So that was one instance where I had it. And then recently I actually got a text that said I needed to click on this link to pay a toll for being on the turnpike. It said like I had an outstanding toll on the turnpike. So that was another one I had gotten recently, and that was via text.
Yeah,
So
I actually get those quite frequently. Seems like every other
yes.
week somebody's telling me that I'm going to get arrested because I didn't pay a toll. So,
Yes. Yes. And I have now gotten to the point where they don't even phase me. I just delete them. But the
mhm.
first one I got, I was like, oh my goodness, like, how did I have a toll that I didn't know of? And again, what I was able to do is I got on their website because I do have an account through them, got on their website and like logged in and then saw that it wasn't legitimate. But if I clicked on that link, that would have potentially been problematic. So don't click on any links that you get, I think is the key
Mhm.
there, unless you're expecting it or know of it. Like I know sometimes you send a link specifically, but you're going to go ahead and tell somebody, hey, I'm going to send you a link and it's a safe link.
Mhm.
So, all right. Tech support scams. Tell us about this one, Connor.
Yeah, so tech support scams really originate through like it's kind of like web browsing.
Mhm.
So when an individual is web browsing, there might be a pop-up or something on the side of the screen that says, hey, your computer has a virus, click here to fix it, kind of thing. So you go ahead and you click that link, and it gives you a phone number. You call the phone number, and whoever is on the other end isn't from where they say they are.
Mhm.
So why this works, particularly with seniors, is these people pose as experts, and they also impersonate individuals from reputable companies.
Mhm.
So if you have a Microsoft laptop, which is really the most common operating system these days, they might pose as Microsoft tech support. And it's very easy for somebody to be scammed into doing something if they feel as if the other person on the other end of the line knows a lot more than they do about a particular area. So it can be really problematic, especially for older individuals. So ways to avoid this scam. If you just in general, you know. As older individuals, you guys are the target of these scams. And we have to realize that most of the time, if you are receiving these emails or messages or pop-ups because you are the target audience, you are more likely to have that happen to you, because these people are specifically looking for you. So whatever number or email or something that they give you, I caution again against calling that number or calling that email. And just like with phishing scams, I would go ahead and call whoever it is, Microsoft or Apple directly. Go ahead, find their contact information. They have support teams that are legitimate. Find their contact information on their websites. Contact them and say, hey, I got this pop up. Is it legitimate? And I can almost guarantee you it will not be legitimate.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it's very important at least to verify whether or not these sources are what they say they are before going forward and paying anybody to do anything to your computer.
I've told this story to a couple of clients, but I always struggle with what to get my dad for Christmas. And this past year, I didn't have to struggle because he was working on his laptop at home and he tends to fall prey to the clickbait. So he clicked on something and his computer started making this siren noise. He got the message, that I think his antivirus software, somebody had infiltrated his computer and needed to call this number. So, of course, he calls the number and they're asking for information from him. So, my dad at that point recognized that it was a scam. His way to solve it was not the rational way. So, he went out into the garage with a hammer and beat the computer so that they couldn't get his information. So, that's one way to handle it.
All right.
So, for Christmas, it allowed me to know exactly what to get him. I got him a new tablet so that he could have something to be on. But when I was talking to my computer guy, he said, just shutting off the computer, shutting it down and restarting it probably would have cleared it from that message. But another way to go about it is take a hammer to it, and that will also get rid of that message as well. All right, let's talk about romance scams. So this one intrigued me because I had a client that also experienced this with one of those online dating sites that was targeting. It's like I'm trying to think. Our Time, I think, might have been, but it was
Mm,
targeting people a little bit older, trying to bring romance, kind of a dating app for them. And
mm,
this she had met somebody online, and he had, said that he was overseas trying to get back home, and he just needed some money and support in order to be able to do that. So tell us a little bit about romance scams, what it looks like, why it works, and how to avoid it.
yeah. So these romance scammers typically create fake profiles on dating sites. And what's interesting to note is the dating sites that these people target are ones that they know that an older demographic primarily uses. So you won't typically see these scams on dating sites with younger demographics. But I would still be cautious in that instance. But I would also say that on dating sites with older demographics, these scams run rampant.
Mhm,
They are all over the place. Um, why some of these scams work is emotional vulnerability,
mhm,
especially for older single individuals. They might feel the need to, find somebody to share their life with, and they might want to fill that need urgently. And because of that, they're more likely to be trusting to individuals that they have not met yet. Um, so, uh, you know, Ways to avoid this scam is simply not to pay any money to anybody you haven't met. I know this is something that's kind of, really straightforward, and kind of why would you say that? Because obviously you don't do that. But still, when we have to understand that individuals do get lonely. Individuals do feel the need for companionship.
mhm,
So it's not out of the ordinary for us to, really think these individuals are genuine. Um, and another big thing that we have to take note of is artificial intelligence. Um, so artificial intelligence isn't something that is readily known in older populations. Like my parents are in their 60s. They know it exists, but they don't know how prevalent it really is.
mhm,
So somebody could very easily create videos or even FaceTime images using artificial intelligence to pose as one person or another. To the degree that even on this call, I could be an artificial intelligence,
mhm.
and you would never know just because they have become so advanced recently. Um, so I would say just because you received an audio or video message from somebody doesn't mean that they're necessarily real, even if they say they are. So I would make sure that you would,
Right,
go ahead and find these people in real life.
right,
Meet them first before you end up doing things like this.
right. I think that's a good tip. Lottery and sweepstakes scams. What are these, Connor?
Yeah. So, what this usually looks like is either emails or messages saying that an individual has won some large sum of money. Um, so, usually, how this works is these individuals will pose as various lottery or sweepstakes organizations, and let the individual know that they have won such and such prize of X amount of money, or they won a car or a house or something. Um, and typically it's, well, you need to pay taxes or fees up front
Mhm,
in order to receive your winnings. Um, so you know how to avoid this scam is like with a lot of these other scams, is just to Google the organization,
mhm,
figure out whether or not these people are reputable, and from there figure out whether or not you actually won. And if you contact them directly, separate and apart from whatever email they sent you, like if they sent you contact information, don't use that contact information. Go and find the contact information yourself on the internet, and contact those people, see if it's true. But unlike with other scams, some of these organizations are just plainly made up.
right.
Um, so if you can't find the organization online, it is almost certainly a scam. Um, and another important thing to note, and this kind of ties in legally, um, is taxes aren't paid up front. Taxes are really just based on a measurement of your income.
Right.
So, like, um, I work for Sam at the moment, and I do not pay taxes to the government prior to her giving me my paycheck. Um, then that doesn't happen for anybody. That would be terrible. Who would do that? Pay $10,000 just to in the future receive whatever it is, 30. So no organization should ever be asking you to pay taxes up front because that's not how this works. Um, and Same thing with fees. We shouldn't be paying any fees up front because a lot of lottery or legitimate organizations will actually take the taxes and fees out of the winnings themselves. So the check you receive is the entirety of the winnings minus taxes and fees. So it's important to recognize that not a lot of these individuals are legitimate for those reasons.
I think that's a good point. My grandmother had this happen to her, and she never entered any sweepstakes or lotteries either. And that's the other thing I said to her. I said, Nana, did you enter this? And she's like, well, no, I don't do things like that. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing too, is just a thought of, did you enter some sort of sweepstakes that you would be expecting to get something like this? And if the answer
Mhm.
is no, then it's probably not legitimate either.
Yes.
Government impersonation scams. This sounds very ominous.
Yes. So government impersonation scams are rather interesting
Mhm.
because they kind of go a step further from not only impersonating some sort of business organization, but impersonating the government is a huge no-no. You really can't do that. So a lot of these people will impersonate IRS or the Social Security Administration, tell you you have back taxes, you didn't pay. We're going to garnish your wages. A whole bunch of things, even put you in jail. It's usually coercion to pay them under threat. Um,
Mhm.
so how to avoid this scam really is first of all not to respond to the email or any of its contents. So if they ask you for specific information to provide it over email, please do not do that. So a lot of the agencies, or all of them, the IRS and other agencies, will not ask you for personal information over email. If they do request personal information from you, they will most likely do so in the form of a document that is physically mailed to your house. Um, all of these organizations will communicate in that manner. So if you do receive an email asking you for your social security number, just know that the IRS will only ask you for your social security number if it's a physical form that they ask you and provide you to fill out. Um, so it's really, I guess, in a way, a difficult. It's difficult just because of the coercion factor.
Mhm.
A lot of people think that this is very urgent because it's the government, and
Right.
that's what the trick is here for them. So we need to be mindful of their position with that.
My experience with this was not with an elderly client. I had a friend of mine whose husband was a dentist who's, 40s, and he got called at his office and said, he owed some amount in taxes and he needed to bring it to the Walmart parking lot, and an IRS agent would meet them there to collect the payment. The scary thing is that my friend got a call from her husband that's like, I need you to go into our safe and get this amount of cash because I have to meet the IRS agent in the Walmart parking lot. And my friend is like, you realize the IRS is not here going to meet you at the Walmart parking lot. Like, that's not how the government works. So I'm not going home and getting the money out of the safe. So again, it's this sense of, oh my goodness, the IRS is going to do something if I don't act like that. Just from my experience working with the IRS and other government entities, nothing goes quickly, like, and everything is done in writing. So if you're not getting it via mail or something in writing requesting something formally, if it's an email, if it's a phone call and it has a very quick deadline, and you have to do something like meet somebody in a Walmart parking lot that just doesn't sound right, it's definitely a scam. So I wanted to mention that just because this person is educated. I mean, they are a dentist. They went to dental school. So it's not like this affects just elderly people. It's affecting everybody. You just have to kind of think through and say, does this make sense? And the IRS, just like every government entity, is always going to do something in writing, and it always takes a while to do it. So if it seems like an unreasonable deadline, it's going to be a scam. All right, online shopping and classified ad scams. I love online shopping. So tell me what I need to be careful of here, Connor.
Yeah, so these these scams are very interesting because I know a lot of people that do online shopping. So the demographic for this is rather large. Um, so a lot of this is fake websites or listings that would offer deep discounts on products that they don't actually have. So you might be looking for a particular pair of shoes, or you might be looking for a particular sweatshirt or what have you. Um, these there you might get an ad for the same shoes or the same sweatshirt at 90% off at this website. So you really have to be careful about that. And I know that sometimes it could be a little freaky because you'll be talking about something and then all of a sudden you'll see an ad for it. And same applies here. Um, in those instances, companies are tracking your search history to some degree. So if you're looking for those things, these fake organizations might purchase that information or also be tracking whatever you're doing in order to kind of give you ads that would really target you personally for specific products. Um, so how to avoid these scams really is just to never blindly trust these sales or discounts that you may get either through pop-ups or emails or anything. And a lot of this is whether or not you expect to receive such a discount. So I have as an example here, you were on the Macy's official website and receive a discount code for being a rewards member, because I know my mother is a rewards member, and she gets emails all the time from Macy's saying, "Oh, hey, you have a 20% coupon." Those are fine because you expect those sort of emails. If you don't expect, I don't know, if you don't have a Macy's Star Rewards card and all of a sudden you're getting emails from Macy's for 80% off, I would be a little suspect about that. And again, like with all these other scams, it might be a good idea to contact these organizations directly and ask whether or not this is a valid sale.
Absolutely. And I like what you said, when something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
always a good rule of thumb. Healthcare and prescription scams. And this one I think is really important because a lot of our clients are on prescriptions. So
Yep.
tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see with a prescription scam.
Yeah, certainly. So what these look like typically are either websites or emails or other sorts of advertising that are giving you an ad for cheap drugs, cheap prescription drugs, or so-called miracle drugs. I have there drugs that would cure cancer or Alzheimer's or dementia or what have you. So why this typically works is health concerns are of a high priority for a lot of people, and especially with people that have somewhat terminal illnesses. They may feel desperate to a degree in order to help themselves as best they can, and they're very susceptible in that time and that mindset to scams like this. So in terms of how to avoid this scam, I think the easiest thing to do is ask your primary care physician about the medications that you're seeing ads for, or looking into, because chances are your primary care physician will already know about such medication that are miracle cures,
Right.
or if they don't know about such a medication, they may even research it for you. And I would caution against taking any drug or purchasing any drug without medical supervision from a licensed physician. And if that physician is not prescribing it to you, I would be very hesitant to see an ad for a prescription drug and purchase it. And again, I have here a little adage from my dad. If it sounds too good to be true, it often is. So if they're promising you a miracle cure, it's probably too good to be true. Because if one did exist, for heart disease or something like that, I would imagine your primary care physician or your cardiologist would most certainly let you know that such a drug existed.
Yes. Make sure, Connor, you have on here about using pharmacies or healthcare providers that are licensed and recognized by the state or national regulatory bodies. I mention
Mhm.
this because with my insurance, sometimes I feel like the pharmacy that they assign to me changes. Like, for example, mine just recently changed to a home delivery prescription company, Express Scripts, for example. And
Mhm.
like, I think that's different. Like, if it's coming through your insurance and they're saying, okay, we're going to switch pharmacies and it's now going to be this pharmacy is the one that they're going to have the prescriptions go through. I think that's okay because it's coming through
Mhm.
your health insurance, but it's not going to come out of the blue. Like, I get notification through my health insurance that this is going to be the change that's happening.
Yes, that's a great point. It is also very advantageous to go through your pharmacy and really trust
Yes,
anybody that would be licensed, or anybody that would be affiliated with your insurance company personally.
absolutely. Family impersonation scams. I always feel like this one is one that elderly
Mhm.
clients especially fall prey to. It just sounds horrible to get a call like this. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah. So, in terms of family impersonation scams, I guess I can kind of explain this best with a story from my grandmother.
Mhm.
Um, so she received a call from my sister saying that she was stuck in New York City and needed $500 for a train ticket out of the city. Um, and now this individual had impersonated somebody of trust, being my sister,
Mm.
um, and did so to my elderly grandmother, who would do absolutely anything and everything for us. So that's kind of how these scams work. They
Did
will
it
target
sound
in.
like your sister?
Um, it wasn't a conversation that I heard, but she
Okay.
perceived it to be my sister in that way.
Okay.
So I would imagine it was pretty close.
Right.
It was before the time of artificial intelligence, but I'll get into that a little bit here.
Okay.
Um,
Good.
so so she received this phone call, thought it was legitimate, and ended up calling my mom and said, "Hey, Donna, why are you not helping your daughter?" And my mom said, "What do you mean? Caitlin's upstairs in her room. I don't understand what's going on." So it was very quickly stomped out. So that was a great way for my grandmother to handle that situation. Was, hold on, let me talk to my daughter. So that kind of gets me into how to avoid these scams. You One big thing that I've heard a lot through my law school career, especially talking about capacity and these certain scams for elderly people, is really set up a safe word or a safe sentence with your loved ones, whoever that is. so that if you do get a call from any of these individuals, any of your loved ones requesting funds to be sent to them directly, you want to be able to ask them, okay, what's our safe word? What's our safe phrase? And if they can't give it to you, that is not your loved one, and you should not send that money. Um, so it it is also important to note about artificial intelligence is just because it sounds like them doesn't mean it's them. So that makes that whole trick that I had just outlined that much more important. Because with artificial intelligence, it only takes a sentence of yours in order to spoof your voice almost perfectly over the phone. So it could sound exactly like your grandmother, granddaughter, grandson, whoever it is, and they could be requesting money, and you could do it because, oh, it is Susie, it sounds exactly like her, it has to be her, this is something she would do. And another big thing to note is if that individual doesn't typically ask you for money, they're probably not the ones asking you for money now.
Right.
Like, I know my sister isn't one to go to my grandmother for money. That's the last person we would have ever went to for or money if we really needed to get out of New York City. And to that point, I mean, we lived close enough into New York City that my parents could just drive in and pick her up anyway. So that was something that my grandmother really had to think through, is whether or not, all of a sudden my granddaughter would be coming to me for money. So that's another good point, is make sure if it's not something they would typically do, they're probably not doing it now. So either have that safe word in place and ask them what it is, or safe phrase, or call another loved one, maybe their mom, their sister, their brother, and inquire about the circumstances of whatever you were being told.
I think that's a good thought, especially now when voices can be impersonated. Even if you think it sounds like your loved one, it might not be. So
Mhm.
having that safe word or phrase might be the way that you're able to weed out those predators.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some behavioral warning signs that we can see. So, sudden fear, anxiety, or confusion about money. We see that a lot as people age. Maybe they have cognitive decline. These are some of the things that we see happening in our clients. It also may be unexpected isolation from friends or family. Now, unfortunately, during the COVID pandemic, we saw that just based on what was happening in the world. We saw some of our clients be isolated from family or friends. So, but in this case, it would be like maybe withdrawal behavior from our loved one, where maybe they used to want to do things, but now they're opting to stay at home and not go out or socialize with friends or family. Changes in mood or personality related to finances. I think, Connor, this is what you were saying about, like, does your grandmother normally um,
Mhm.
give you guys money, the like changes
Yes.
that you might see related to habits and being
Mhm.
secretive with information they would commonly disclose. And I've seen this happen a lot when somebody has a predator or somebody's taking advantage of them in their life and they kind of know that and they don't necessarily want their family members to pick up on that. So I've seen it with a client that had a new romantic relationship in life where they were giving money to their new partner a lot, but they didn't want to share that because they knew their kids would flag that as suspicious behavior. So if you just see a change in someone's behavior that's different from what their normal habits, personality, attitude would be, that might be a sign that something else is going on.
Mhm.
Financial warning signs, so large unexplained transactions like sudden withdrawals, transfers, or frequent ATM use. Unpaid bills and disorganized records, missing statements, overdue payments, even though they have the funds. Strange account activity, maybe there's new signers on the account, wire transfers, unusual charges or checks. Missing property or valuables like jewelry, collectibles, or cash that might have disappeared. Suspicious document changes. So this is something we try to be really sensitive to: abrupt shifts in wills, trusts, or beneficiary designations. And sometimes, I mean, obviously a lot of it is based on maybe how busy we are or how many people we can see in a day, but there is some added wisdom to if I talk to somebody and then they're going to come in 2 weeks later to sign their documents, you don't ever want to be making changes during the appointment because this is a one-time interaction. So I always like to do it in two separate interactions so that I might be talking to someone, they might tell me what changes they want. Then when they come in, I'm reviewing it with them to confirm that this is in fact a change that they want. So our office does try to separate it into two separate interactions just so we can make sure if somebody's making a change to their documents that it's actually something that they want to make. And then the last point here is coercion or pressure. So reluctance to discuss finances around certain individuals. And sometimes we see this if there is a cognitive decline that a client is having, maybe there's some forgetfulness that's happening. So you see that sometimes just in the course of aging, but I think too, it's also a good warning sign that there might be somebody that's taking advantage of an elderly person in our lives. Legal methods to protect our seniors' finances. So, of course, this slide I love, right? What can we do to be helpful? So, a durable power of attorney, guardianships or conservatorships, trust as a protective measure. I love that bullet point because I think that's really important. I'm going to give you an example of how we've used that in the past. Third-party oversight, court orders, or preventative documentation and planning. So Connor, let's talk about a durable power of attorney. So this would be a legal document where you're naming an agent that could manage your assets if you'd ever become incapacitated or unable to handle any financial matter that you would have. So typically we recommend it to be durable because then we don't have to require two physicians to weigh in on capacity. It would immediately be effective. Can be broad or limited, meaning you can have it apply to a lot of your assets or all of your assets, or maybe specifically to a business entity or a certain asset. Now, my one issue with a durable power of attorney, and I'm going to explain this in conjunction with one of our other slides, but I do have a client that recently got a health diagnosis, and the concern is that they were diagnosed with a brain tumor. And what happens if this person would ever be impaired? And they were worried about impaired in the sense of like maybe they decide to give their money away or make large transfers, or they're watching like an infomercial or a commercial and they decide to send all of their money to some child in another country based on something they saw on TV. And so I had to have a discussion with the client about powers of attorneys because now it's so hard when you can do so many transactions online. So yes, a durable power of attorney is helpful if you'd be incapacitated because it allows somebody to take over control. But if you haven't been deemed incapacitated, normally if you're doing online transactions, there's no limits there about what you can do. So I did have to have a conversation about you might want to do more than a durable power of attorney because yes, a durable power of attorney appoints somebody who can act if you'd be incapacitated. But what happens if you're having cognitive decline, but maybe nobody notices that, or you're doing an online transaction? And so in this case that we're talking about with the client that had the diagnosis, what we're doing is we're actually going to do a trust, and we're going to transfer assets into the trust, and the trust is going to have more limitations. So the trust is going to say, if this individual tries to do a transaction at one time of over $10,000, they have to have someone else sign off in order to do that transaction. So it's more than a durable power of attorney. It's something else. And you can draft trust to be really flexible like that and give more protection, because that way we have some oversight over the individual. And I was just giving the example of the 10,000. It could be any amount there. So that's just a thought too when I had the durable power of attorney. It's a great place to start, but you might need more than that. Guardianships or conservatorships, this would be if you don't have a power of attorney. So maybe somebody's lost capacity before they actually executed a financial power of attorney. So there might not be a valid power of attorney that exists. Or this is the case where sometimes you might be worried about decisions that somebody makes, even if they do have a power of attorney. So you may be wanting them to be declared incapacitated with more court oversight. Now, the problem is typically when you have somebody declared incapacitated, which you have to do with a guardianship, then they you can only restore capacity if you go through the proper channels of the court system. So usually we're only using guardianships or conservatorships in those extreme cases where we don't have a power of attorney and we need to appoint somebody. Now, in Pennsylvania, some of this can be a little bit cumbersome because we have filing requirements, accounting requirements, all of that with a guardianship. It's much easier if you have a power of attorney. But like I said, you might want more than a power of attorney, and that's where we're talking about trust as a protective measure. So a trust is just a document that says any asset that's titled in the name of the trust name is going to be subject to these rules. And it allows then for you to dictate what management rules you want with a designated trustee. And this can be really helpful because it ensures that your loved one's funds are managed in their best interest. It can be a revocable trust, and that's where I was saying it can be revocable, but you can just have like a co-trustee or a co-signer, if you will, over transactions of a certain amount to provide some guidance and some protection there. You can also make it so that it's irrevocable. This is all going to offer more or stronger asset protection because it can't easily be changed or dissolved. And it does prevent anybody from taking advantage of you because, again, typically there's a mechanism in which distributions have to come out of an irrevocable trust to get that asset protection. So you're going to really prevent someone from taking advantage or exploiting our elder adults. Third-party oversight, this would be like, for example, sometimes we have financial advisors where you can name like a trusted contact or a trusted relative there so that if there are concerns about cognitive decline, we have somebody that we can reach out to. It also normally a financial advisor builds a long-standing relationship with their client. And so that can be really helpful too, because it provides this third party that can help monitor the situation or note any issues that somebody might be having cognitively where there might be some decline. And it also does reduce the likelihood of family disagreements or misuse by relatives because you have this trusted individual that's built this long-standing relationship with a client. You can have co-trustees or co-agents here. And then this last point was just talking about those trusted contacts there. Court orders, you can have protective orders where a judge can issue a freeze on financial accounts if there might be suspicion of exploitation. It does prevent the dissipation of assets while investigations or legal actions are pending. A court can require an accounting, which is just saying if you're the agent or the guardian, you have to give a detailed listing of what assets were in that individual's estate and how were those assets used or spent. You can have an emergency order, which is an emergency or an immediate action to grant somebody authority over somebody. And it does allow quick court intervention. And then enforcement and penalties. Courts can impose fines, restitution, criminal penalties for anyone that's exploited a senior. Okay, Connor, let's talk a little bit about protective documentation and planning because we use these a lot in our office. So we use advanced healthcare directives where it might outline what type of medical decisions that you want. We typically have financial power of attorneys that would outline who you'd want to be in charge of your finances. We usually work with advisors, so they would typically have your financial and personal goals. You want to make sure you're updating your estate documents, reviewing wills, trusts, powers of attorneys to make sure they align with what your wishes are. And then a clear communication is very important. So having those open discussions, written instructions about asset management that can also put protections in place so that somebody is not taking advantage of you if something should happen. Okay, Connor, let's commonly asked questions. So what steps can I take if I suspect abuse? Tell me what would be some things I could do there.
Yeah. So, as an individual who isn't the senior, you would want to speak with that senior privately in order to gather some more information. You might want to notify financial institutions, especially if you have some sort of guardianship in place, if you have some sort of financial power of attorney in place. it might be beneficial to do something like that. So you might want to contact contact adult preventative service or protective services. They could file a report for you, documenting the incident, and they might be able to point you in the right direction of remedying the situation. So you would also want to consult with an attorney, like Sam here, in order to give you a better sense of what kind of legal measures we might be able to help with, that being powers of attorney, guardianships, things of that nature. So a key point here being really early intervention. We want to try to prevent these things from happening in the first place. But if they do happen, we kind of transition into a preventative mode, trying to get rid of as many losses as possible. So these are really the some of the immediate things that we might be able to do to help the elder individual.
What if my loved one doesn't want help, which can happen?
Mhm.
Because again, if they're in a position where they feel vulnerable, they may feel very strongly that this person cares about them, that they trust this person. So I think what's really important here is that you have to make sure that you're approaching it with a lot of respect and love towards that individual, because you can make bad decisions, right? Of any age. You can be a 25-year-old that makes bad decisions. You can be an 85-year-old that makes bad decisions. So just because someone is making a decision that maybe you don't agree with doesn't necessarily mean they're being exploited, nor does it necessarily mean that they've lost capacity.
Mhm.
So I think that's the other thing, is just being able to have a conversation about it, to be able to express your concerns. You want to encourage that transparency. So again, being able to have copies of account statements, maybe you're reviewing accounts together. Maybe you can set up transaction alerts if something should happen. Emphasize the value of backup plan in case of an emergency. If you're truly concerned about safety, then you could explore court interventions with a guardianship and conservatorship with professional advice. But the bottom line is that you want to balance that respect for independence with making sure you're protecting your loved one. And that's the challenge I see every day. Is just, someone might say, well, mom is losing it. She started making decisions I don't agree with. And so you just have to stop and make sure you're approaching it with a lot of love and respect, because again, we need to be respectful, but it's also a question of, do they really have some sort of cognitive decline? And I think as a society, we're really quick to say somebody's losing capacity, when in reality, there might be other medical concerns. I did have a client where they mentioned that their mom seemed out of it, seemed to be making bad decisions. Their checkbook wasn't balanced. The writing in the ledger had all of a sudden become illegible. It actually turned out that the client was suffering from a urinary tract infection, because that
Mm.
can actually cause cognitive decline. So again, if you see an instance where it's a quick change, there might be some medical condition that's causing that change. So again, just making sure you're approaching it with the right tone. So when should I seek court's intervention? So again, if we don't have a valid power of attorney or trust in place, and somebody needs help managing their finances, but either won't delegate an agent or doesn't have the capacity to, then we're going to need court intervention. If we see ongoing exploitation, so evidence of fraud or theft by caregivers or family members, and it's continuing to happen, then you might want to seek court intervention. If there is immediate risk, you might want to freeze accounts or safeguard those assets. And if court oversight, like guardianships or conservatorships, it does provide structured monitoring, but you have to remember it can be costly. So usually, if you do a power of attorney, it's a couple $100s for you to prepare, for our office, for example, to prepare a power of attorney document, but it can be thousands of dollars to get a guardianship. So you just have to make sure it's right in that situation. And you want to remember that court intervention is typically a last resort. Of course, it can be necessary if we have a serious issue that has come up, but just know that typically you want that to be the last resort. Can banks or other institutions help me? So talk to us, Connor, about some bank safeguards that can be in place.
Mhm. Yeah, so many banks offer trusted contact designations, um, or can temporarily freeze suspicious transactions. Um, so if you feel as if you might have fallen victim to a scam, I would always contact the bank. Or contact whatever credit agency you had went through if you were using a credit card, and report the transaction. Maybe you didn't receive the goods. Maybe they withdrew more from your account than they said they were going to. And always reporting these transactions to the institution would kind of put the onus on them to help you as a customer of theirs. So you also, and I kind of want to go back to the trusted contact for a second. Um, you could, depending upon your financial institution, you can have a trusted contact that might be maybe view only on some of your accounts. So it kind of going forward, that might be something that you would want to talk to your mother, your grandmother about. Having you or someone you know that's close with the elder individual as view only on some of their accounts. You can't withdraw money, move money, put money in, any of that, but you can at least check on it every now and again to see whether or not your elder loved one might be being taken advantage of. Um, you we see, at least I do, with a lot of our clients, that we already have financial advisors in place. But if you don't have a financial advisor in place, I would recommend one. um, these individuals could also help monitor your financial transactions, and there's usually systems in place here to flag suspicious transactions. So I know in particular, my father and I had a situation where we were traveling when I was a little kid to a soccer tournament, and my father had gotten to that tournament in another state rather quickly. So when he went to go fill up on gas, his cards were all declined because the financial advisor that we had had looked at our accounts and said, "Oh, there's no way he went from New York to the bottom of New Jersey that quickly. It can't be him." So same thing when we went to Europe, they canceled all of our credit cards. They put them all on hold almost immediately as soon as we got there and we started purchasing things. So a little annoying at the time, but it's really good to have in place. So we also want to make sure we're reporting suspicious abuse. So a lot of these institutions can alert APS or other law enforcement if they suspect criminal activity. And now that's something that is, I would say, kind of automated on their end in a way, so they can catch that activity and report it. But really, if we want to really protect the elder individual, we want to be just as on top of it, if not more on top of it than these financial institutions are. Because remember, these financial institutions serve millions of people. So there's a good chance that they might not catch things. So the onus is on us as relatives of the elder individual to really stay on top of things like this. And I would also encourage seniors to maintain open communication about their financial situations with their institutions and advisors. Make and especially family members as well. Make sure everybody's cued in on how your finances are going, what kind of payments and kind of bills you have, if you feel comfortable with doing so, so that we can try to prevent as much of this abuse as we possibly can.
Absolutely. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing our screen here so that we can close this out. So obviously, Connor and I love talking about this because it's been close to an hour that we have
Yes.
been talking about it. But if you have concerns, you want to go over powers of attorneys or talk about any legal documents, you're always welcome to schedule a consultation at our office. Our contact number is 717-655-2676. Connor, any closing thoughts that you have about elder abuse in this topic?
Yeah, just I would keep in mind that loved ones are here to help you. Um, for the most part, obviously there is some things that go on, but keeping family members in the loop, having trusted advisors, having qualified legal advice as well, and just kind of keeping everybody up to date on what's going on in your life, and any concerns that you might be having financially. Mentally, what have you, is really the key here. And for us as individuals who aren't elderly yet and want to look after our elderly loved ones, we might want to take a more proactive approach in doing so to make sure that those individuals are staying safe, their finances are all in order, and they're safe, and we can have a good life for them moving forward.
Mhm. I think too, it's about relationships. So that's why I think having a good team around you is important with what Connor mentioned with a financial advisor, an attorney, an accountant. I think your loved ones, your family members, kids might be really important too, but having a good team around you to cover taxes, finances, as far as a financial advisor and an attorney can be really helpful. They're just another trusted team that can be in place. Sometimes that means that we're advocating to say, no, mom or dad still do have capacity, and this is an okay decision to make. And sometimes we're also kind of joining with children or powers of attorneys to say, yes, we're also seeing a cognitive decline, and let's put protective measures in place. So I think that's why it's so important to build those relationships. So we hope everybody found this helpful. You're welcome to check out our YouTube channel where we're always posting videos for our monthly virtual seminars. But thank you so much for joining, everybody. I had Connor Burns here. Thank you, Connor, for helping us cover this topic. Thank you all for